So recently, when I was on vacation, I met a guy with his family, and he had a practice for Chinese medicine, and he was very interesting, spiritual person. His wife as well, and we had a chat one evening um, while we were grilling, and he started to explain to me how difficult it was for him to integrate his spiritual practice with his everyday life. He was a busy man. He had they had a business back home. They were living abroad. They were flying back and forth between countries. He was running this Chinese medicine practice. He had a child, two children. And so he was very busy and quite successful in what he was doing. But he was running into the same problem that I was dealing with since a long time. And that is that he just couldn't integrate his practice into his daily life. He just had too many responsibilities and just found that there wasn't enough time to practice. At least enough to really notice progress. And while he was talking about his difficulties, I could really identify with all of that, because it was really my problem as well, up until not too long ago, when I was struggling to integrate my practice as well. And while he was talking to me, I just felt this urge to share with him one of the deeper insights that I've had in terms of how we can really integrate our practice in our everyday lives. And I was compelled to share these three fundamental aspects of pretty much any spiritual practice. And I thought it would be a nice thing to do it on this video as well, because I think there's a lot of people out there struggling with this issue. And these three principles, I mean, I would say it's pretty much irrelevant what kind of a spiritual practice you devote yourself to. At some point, it all boils down to these three aspects, and it's simply to be in the present moment. That's the first. The second is to direct your attention towards your body or your mind, to bring it within you, disregarding everything that happens around you. And the third aspect is continuity. And it's the continuity that I really want to talk about in this video. If you lack continuity in your everyday integration of your spiritual practice, then you will not make much progress. And it's funny, because you hear a lot of people that have a practice or that are teachers, they speak about this, and you hear them often say, oh, that's okay, all you need is 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you can integrate 10 or 15 minutes of practice in your daily routine, then that's a great start. And although, of course, it is true that if you can practice 10 or 15 minutes a day, you're better off than not practicing at all, and it will lay out a foundation for maybe the possibility to elongate those periods, maybe to half an hour to an hour one day. But even if you manage to do an hour a day of formal meditation, let's say, maybe you can do an hour in the morning, maybe you can do an hour in the evening. If you manage to do those two, then you're probably already one of the, 1% or 2% of the people who, or householders who are interested in spiritual growth, that will actually practice every day. I don't think that there's a lot of people out there that have the desire to really make spiritual progress that can actually put in more than an hour or two a day. If they have a job, they have a family, that's just gets really difficult. And of course, the key is, and this is something that I shared with him as well, I think the key is not so much to try to find that perfect practice that lights you up and that really speaks to you. I think we're all on our individual journeys, and we all need different approaches towards our spiritual growth. So it's only natural for us to shop around on the spiritual market and see what works best for us, or where we think promises the biggest and most rapid spiritual growth. And although that is important, that you find that technique that works for you in that moment, I think it's much more important to actually allow your everyday circumstances to become the very foundation of your practice. So, even if you are into formal meditation, or if you're into yoga and you would have to set aside some time to do that, where you have to actually sit down or get some time on the mat, these formal aspects of your practice are important, and as much as you can get them in, that's great. But the real spiritual growth happens in between those formal practices, and I think that's what I wanted to talk about, the continuity. If you try to force a technique into your busy lifestyle, you're going to get frustrated, and that's exactly where this guy was at, and that's exactly where I was at in the past. And nowadays, things have changed a lot for me, and I've had the chance to really explore this aspect of integration of practice into my daily routine. And of course, I'm very lucky in that aspect, because I managed to create a lifestyle in which I can actually practice a lot. But I have 3 kids, 3 small kids between the age of 2 and 7, and the 2, 5, and 7. One of them has Down syndrome, which requires an additional amount of attention and patience. And I work a 9-to-5 job, and we live in a house where all kinds of things need to be repaired, or the garden needs to be looked after, and so there's a lot in my life that wouldn't allow me to sit down and practice, which is my preferable choice. If I could, I'd just sit down and meditate, since I come from that Vipassana background. But it's just not possible. And so what I've learned is to really look at what your situation is in life, and then allow that content, in my case, the work, the children, the household, the relationship with my wife, to become the grounds upon which you integrate, within which the framework within which you practice. And that's why I came back to these 3 principles, to these 3 pillars of any spiritual practice: the being mindful, being in the present moment, directing that attention inwards, and being continuous. So being in the present moment in itself is not a difficult thing to do. Once you've gotten used to what that feels like, it's easy. And directing your attention inwards is also quite easy once you've gotten used to all of the possibilities that you have. In Theravada Buddhism, we call it the four foundations of mindfulness: the body, the thoughts, the feelings, and the mind objects, like concepts and beliefs and ideas. These things that we create in order to understand reality. So it's easy once you have a certain foundation to just tap into these things and anchor your awareness there. What's not so easy is to remind yourself that you need to be doing that. And it gets really difficult if you're very busy. And if you have 3 kids that constantly pull and drag on you and want something from you, it gets even more difficult. It's just, or if at work, if you're very busy and you have to engage with other people and you have to concentrate on certain things, it gets very difficult. So to remember that you need to be in the present moment, remember to bring your attention inwards, that is a very difficult thing. Doing it itself is not so difficult. And then, of course, once you've remembered and you brought your attention towards the present moment and within yourself, then of course it gets even more difficult to maintain that. You might remember that a few times throughout the day, and that's good, but you really need to basically remember it all the time. Nisargadatta Maharaj, that amazing non-duality teacher, who I personally am very fond of, and his book I Am. He talks about it in a way that as a householder. Basically what he says, all you need to do is remember to be in the present moment in every moment of your leisure. And he sort of separates work from activity. And generally speaking, what he's saying is that work is done by the whole for the whole, which means that you are acting out of a non-selfish perspective, and a perspective without identity on your character, and activity is done by the self for the self. So as soon as you have leisure, basically what most of us default to is activity. We distract ourselves, we just do things that are fun for us. We indulge in stimulation of the senses. And it's in those times where you, if you can, should be continuous. So if you're at work and you're interacting with people at work, or you actually have to put your mind to what you're doing at work, or if you are in a relationship with people, in an exchange with people where that exchange is of importance, like with children, for example, or with your loved ones or friends, meaningful exchange, then you do that. But as soon as you switch to leisure, and it's your choice what you can do, and it really doesn't matter afterwards, because it's just really distraction, entertainment, just anything fun or hobby or whatever. That's where you could be continuously practicing. And in his opinion, he said that would be perfectly enough to become fully awakened. So in my situation, what I've trained myself to do is just, although I would like to go into my formal meditation, I just reduce the activity, the spiritual practice, to these 3 principles. I just bring myself into the present moment. Um, and it really doesn't matter. Sometimes it's just the body, sensations in the body. Sometimes it's the thoughts that are happening. Sometimes I just create a spaciousness within which I rest my awareness. Sometimes it's emotions. Sometimes I switch to labeling. Um, it doesn't have to be a deep meditation in that sense. All it needs to do is really to interrupt the thought process of the mind. If the mind doesn't have anything to do, it will just create its own little playground of thoughts. And these thoughts are what are going to eventually keep you from seeing reality as it is. So as long as you can concentrate on the present moment experience and bring that present moment experience to the awareness of that you are existing within this experience, your mind will calm down and your practice will become much more continuous. And as it becomes more continuous, a lot of these habits of distracting yourself, they start to fall away. And I've noticed that since like two and a half years that I've been practicing this now, that I've basically put all the emphasis on continuity in everyday life without forcing a specific style onto it. A lot of things just fell away. I've taken some probably in most people's eyes radical steps to achieve this. Like I've deleted all social media from my phone. I don't have Facebook anymore. I don't have Instagram. As soon as those two were gone, I would fall back on Pinterest because I'm a visual designer. I love beautiful things, so I would always look at images of stuff, houses or art or projects, and I would catch myself being there a lot. Then I got rid of that, and then I basically slipped into YouTube, and I would watch a lot of YouTube stuff, which was terrible because it consumed so much of my time. Although it is very practical if you want to learn something specific. I'm not saying to not use it at all, but as soon as you notice that you're just scrolling around looking for the next thing to watch, then that's where it becomes dangerous. And so I deleted YouTube, the app, on my phone as well, just to take away all temptation. And every time that temptation would come up, I'd tell myself, "Oh no, this is the time to be practicing." Or if I can't sleep at night, I don't get upset. I'm like kind of happy. I'm like lying there. I'm like, great, I have some time to practice. This is awesome. And I just lie there and observe physical sensations and try to really let go of all concepts connected to them. So they become very abstract and break down the concepts and ideas that we have about the body. Each of these segments of mindfulness, depending on which object you choose to observe, they chisel away on different aspects of the illusion that block you. And within 2 years, I've really noticed a huge difference. It's a whole nother story. It's also much more subtle. Like if you go on to the retreats, of course, and you have 10 days of continuity on a formal meditation level, that you still can't compare that to continuity within the framework of everyday life, working and being a parent. So that's more radical, and the insights become a lot more apparent. But I just noticed a huge shift in my perspective on things that happened over a gradual level. You really see it by looking back and thinking back. All of a sudden, and notice that you haven't cried in in a long time, or with tragic events in life. I had a few tragic events in my life in the last 6 months, and they just don't have that power over you anymore. And you just notice that you've become a lot more accepting. You need a lot less in general in life. You just generally are much more balanced, much more content, much more forgiving, much more open towards other human beings. You have much less of expectations towards yourself. And then all of that happens gradually. It doesn't happen like those sledgehammer insights on a retreat. But so it takes time for them to become visible. But it's happening on a whole another level since I've committed to the continuity aspect of the practice. And I think what you need to everybody's on a different path, and everybody has different expectations towards their growth. But if you really want to go for it, if you really want to have radical transformation in your life, then you need to put the continuity of your practice on place number one. It has to become number one in your life. It has to become more important than your work. It has to become more important than your relationships. It has to become more important than money, or even like your children, if you have any, or loved ones. And this might rub some people the wrong way if you hear that. Like, how, as a parent, how can you say that your personal spiritual growth is more important than your children? And of course, it doesn't mean that you completely neglect your children. You're not, like I said, you're integrating the practice into your parenting, into your interaction with your children. You're not telling your children to sit in front of the TV. We don't have a TV, but to watch something on the tablet or on the phone for an hour so that you can sit and meditate. That's not what I mean. But you integrate it into the parenting aspect, into the parenting part of your daily life. So I think this is something that we often just forget, and I thought it was worth making a video about it. To keep these aspects, these three aspects in mind, and to not get too lost in what kind of a practice am I choosing, and is it extreme enough, or I've noticed it myself over the years. I would jump from one technique to the next, and then I would hear about a new technique, and I would do that, and then I would get into the, different kinds of meditation techniques, and then I would get into different kinds of breath work, and then yoga, and just philosophies, non-duality, all of these things, and all of that is good, and I think it's worth exploring, but it's not. It shouldn't take up it shouldn't be the main principle that you devote yourself to. I think it's important to pick a technique. You choose that technique that speaks to you, that you think you'd be good at and that you would benefit from, and then you just stick to it. You don't hop around and then do the next technique and then the next technique and then the next technique, and then you integrate a little bit of that and then you do a little bit of that. Find the structure, a teaching that works for you, and then stick to it. And don't let that become the number one. Let the continuity become number one, and boil it down to the principles of being in the present moment, directing your awareness within you, and being continuous. And you will get results. There's no way you will not get results. This is, if you can manage to keep that up, you will get results. I've been getting results. It's changed everything. And I've come to a point where I actually get paid to meditate, paid to be mindful. It's so funny. It's like, I'm going to make a video on that, I think, how I get paid to meditate. Because it's all, obviously it's all about letting go. If you can be continuous, another aspect of continuity, if you can be continuous, letting go, it just happens by itself. Because in the present moment, if you can be in the present moment, experience it as much as you can, there's nothing to hold on to. There's nothing to compare to. There's nothing to regret or plan. And it's all of those things that we usually identify with and cling to, and that then becomes so difficult to let go. There's not even an insight needed in that sense to let go. There's just, if you can manage to be continuous with being in the present moment experience, there's just letting go just happens by itself. Actually, there's nothing to let go of. That's a funny thing. You don't even have to let go anymore. There's nothing there. And like so many things in life, within the nature of our psychological structure, it's all about conditioning the mind and creating these automated processes that take on a life of their own. And if you constantly interrupt your thought processes and you don't allow yourself to drift off into these big stories, past or future, and you constantly be in the present moment and you see the beauty of it all. I mean, I'm just looking out of this window and looking at there's like these trees and bushes and they're swaying in the wind, and it's just so beautiful. The grass is just moving, and the light and the shadow play, and it's just so beautiful. Things become so interesting in the present moment experience. The more continuous you can be, the more interest you will find that anchors you within that present moment explosion. Flock of birds flying by. Just what? You just see something like that, it's incredible. Yeah. So continuity, it's the major thing I find right now. Much more important than technique and all these things. It's just pick something, pick a practice, and become continuous, and everything's gonna change. All right. So I hope this video will Find those who are in the need of inspiration to take on the next step within their practice. Make it number one, make it continuous. I bow to you.